Why did the death of a country singer move the entire world? On August 25, 2026, Dolly Parton passed away at her Nashville home. She was 80 years old. Hours later, her nephew Brian Seaver posted a statement on behalf of the family, words steeped in faith, in gratitude, in the quiet certainty that Dolly was home with the Lord she'd sung about her whole life. Then something remarkable happened. The mourning didn't stay in Tennessee. It crossed every border, every genre, every political line. Not because she was a country singer, but because of what she carried out of those mountains and what she gave back. How does a single voice echo so far beyond the hills where it began? On August 25, 2026, the world learned that Dolly Parton had died at her home in Nashville, age 80, after what her family called a brief battle with cancer. This was according to CNN and Today.com. The first word came from her nephew Brian Seaver, who has been at her side for decades, posting a video just before 1 in the afternoon. Seaver's message was pure Dolly: faith, gratitude, and the promise that she was finally with Jesus, Carl, her parents, and all those she'd loved and lost. The BBC and People reported pink lights shining from New York to London, as if the world itself was mourning. And here's the thing. This grief didn't stop with country fans. Why did the death of a singer from the Tennessee mountains move people who'd never set foot in a honky-tonk? To answer that, we have to go back to the place where her story began. What does it really mean to come from nothing? Dolly Rebecca Parton was born January 19, 1946, in Pittman Center, Tennessee, right in the heart of the Smoky Mountains. According to the Country Music Hall of Fame, she was the fourth of 12 children, squeezed into a one-room cabin without electricity or running water. Her father, Robert Lee Parton, worked as a sharecropper and later took construction jobs when he could get them. He couldn't read or write, but Dolly always said he was the smartest man she ever knew. Avie Lee Owens, her mother, filled their world with ballads, church hymns, and stories, passing down the music and imagination that would shape Dolly's life. Family meant everything. There were so many mouths to feed that Dolly joked they didn't know they were poor, just crowded. But poverty wasn't some distant idea. It was hauling water from the creek, patching clothes until there was nothing left to patch, and bartering cornmeal for a doctor's visit. Bill Owens, Dolly's uncle, saw something special in her early on. He bought her first real guitar and told anyone who'd listen that this girl was going places. And then there's the coat. According to Dolly's own stories, Avie Lee made her a patchwork coat from rags and a baby blanket, telling her the Bible story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. Dolly wore it to school, proud as could be, only to be mocked by classmates who saw nothing but poverty. But to Dolly, that coat was love, hope, and pride stitched together, proof that you can be rich in spirit even when you have nothing at all. That's the real beginning, not just a legend in the making, but a little girl who learned early that worth isn't measured by what you own, but by what you carry in your heart. How does a child from a mountain hauler start to believe her voice belongs to the world? According to the Country Music Hall of Fame, Dolly Parton sang her first solos in church, where gospel music demanded both discipline and heart. That's where she learned to project, to harmonize, and to stand her ground in front of a crowd, even if the crowd was mostly family and neighbors. But Dolly's ambitions were never small. At just 10 years old, she landed a regular spot on the Cass Walker Show, a Knoxville radio and TV program famous across East Tennessee for giving local kids a shot. Regional variety shows like this were a lifeline for rural performers, offering a taste of fame that went far beyond the front porch. By 13, she'd already recorded her first single, Puppy Love, and, as the BBC notes, made her debut on the Grand Ole Opry, the closest thing to a national stage in country music. Being introduced there as a teenager wasn't just an honor. It was proof. that a girl from the Smokies could stand shoulder to shoulder with Nashville's best. The applause, the bright lights, the validation, these moments didn't make Dolly overnight famous, but they convinced her she was meant for more than mountain life. In her own words, she promised herself she'd get out of the hills and take her music with her. Dolly Parton left home the day after high school graduation in 1964, carrying a cardboard suitcase and her songs, bound for Nashville. The city was more than a destination. It was a business built on publishing, recording, radio, and touring, where every hopeful songwriter learned the rules before chasing the spotlight. On her first day, outside a laundromat on Music Row, Dolly met Carl Thomas Dean. He worked as a machinist and avoided the public eye, preferring a quiet life far from the industry's glare. According to her official biography and BBC reports, Carl rarely appeared in public, choosing instead to be Dolly's anchor behind the scenes. They married on June 17, 1966, and remained partners for nearly 59 years until Carl's death in March 2025. In those early Nashville years, Dolly wrote songs for other performers, learning the business from the inside. She understood the value of privacy and the strength found in keeping part of her life separate from fame. What does it take for a woman to outsmart an entire industry that refuses to take her seriously? In 1967, Dolly Parton released her first solo hit, a song called Dumb Blonde. According to Billboard, it reached number 24 on the country chart. But that title wasn't just a punchline. It was a dare. The country music business then was a man's world, where women were expected to sing, smile, and stay out of the boardroom. Dolly saw how the industry tried to shrink her down to a joke about hair color and curves, ignoring the songwriter and business mind underneath. So she flipped it. She made Dumb Blonde the name of her debut single, and as the Country Music Hall of Fame notes, her 1967 album, Hello, I'm Dolly, announced her as a solo force. Later, when asked about the jokes, she shot back, "Dumb blonde jokes don't bother me because I know I'm not dumb, and I know I'm not blonde." That's wit as armor, sharp, funny, and in total control. In a field where women rarely owned their music or called the shots, Dolly turned every put-down into a punchline she owned. She wasn't just surviving the boys' club. She was rewriting the rules. What does it cost to outgrow your mentor? In 1967, Porter Wagoner, already a star with his own nationally syndicated television show, invited Dolly Parton to join him as his girl singer. According to the Country Music Hall of Fame, the Porter Wagoner show reached millions of living rooms every week. 12 duet albums followed, and their voices blended so well that for a while it seemed impossible to imagine one without the other. But the stage that launched her was also a cage. Wagoner ran a tight ship, his format, his spotlight, his rules. Dolly was grateful, but she was never meant to play second fiddle. She wanted more than the role of sidekick, and she had the songs to prove it. By 1974, the tension was impossible to ignore. Dolly told Billboard she wrote "I Will Always Love You" as a goodbye letter to Porter, a song about gratitude, separation, and the right to choose your own path. She played it for him in private. He cried. She left. That moment wasn't just a personal break, it was a professional risk. Wagoner later sued for a share of her future earnings, a reminder that independence in Nashville meant fighting for every inch, every dollar, every song. And here's where the business side matters. When Elvis Presley wanted to record "I Will Always Love You," his manager demanded half the publishing rights. Dolly said no. Publishing means you own the song itself, not just the recording. You decide who sings it, how it's used, and who gets paid. According to Forbes, that one decision kept the song in her hands, and decades later, when Whitney Houston's version for The Bodyguard became a global phenomenon, the royalties flowed back to Dolly. More than $10 million, by the BBC's estimate, all because she refused to give away her rights. That's the price of independence, walking away from comfort, facing lawsuits, and standing up to the king of rock and roll. But Dolly Parton never looked back. She turned her farewell into an anthem, and her struggle for ownership into a lesson for every artist who came after. What makes a country song last longer than the person who wrote it? With Dolly Parton, it always comes back to the writing. According to Grammy Records and Performing Songwriter, she wrote close to 3,000 songs in her life, with about 450 actually recorded and released. That's not just a resume, that's proof of a mind that never stopped working. But what sets her apart isn't just the number. It's the way she wrote about women's lives, especially the parts that hurt. Take Jolene, written in 1973. The Country Music Hall of Fame calls it a masterpiece of emotional storytelling. On the surface, it's a plea from one woman to another. Please don't take him just because you can. But listen closer, and you hear something more. A narrator who's painfully aware of her own insecurity, yet refuses to lash out. She's not blaming Jolene, not even angry. She's just honest. That line, "Please, don't take him just because you can," carries dignity, fear, and a kind of grace you don't hear in most pop songs. Dolly's best songs live in the gray areas. Her female characters face poverty, jealousy, desire, and betrayal, but they never lose their sense of self. She walks the line between Loretta Lynn's hard-edged realism and Tammy Wynette's melodrama, but always with a wink and a sense of humor. According to the Country Music Hall of Fame, this mix of vulnerability and wit made her different. She could write Jolene and I Will Always Love You in the same year, and both would become classics, one pleading, one letting go. That's not just country music, that's human. What does it take for a country girl to break through the walls of her own genre? In 1977, Dolly Parton released Here You Come Again. The song shot to #1 on the country chart and, for the first time, climbed all the way to #3 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, for anyone not steeped in music charts, that means Dolly's voice was suddenly everywhere. Not just in Nashville, but in cars, kitchens, and clubs all across America. According to Billboard, the country chart measures radio play and sales for country stations, while the Hot 100 mixes every style, pop, rock, R&B, you name it. Some traditionalists bristled at the slicker sound, calling it proof that Dolly was leaving country behind. But Dolly didn't flinch. At a 1978 press conference, she said, "I'm not leaving country, I'm taking it with me." That's the heart of her story. Expansion wasn't betrayal. It was loyalty in action, carrying her roots into every room, no matter how fancy the wallpaper. What does it say about a country singer when Hollywood comes calling? For Dolly Parton, the movies weren't a detour. They were just another stage for her stories. In 1980, she made her film debut in 9 to 5 alongside Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. The plot? 3 women taking on a sexist, egotistical boss in a corporate office where men ran the show and women did the work. According to the BBC, the film captured a workplace where harassment and limited advancement were just facts of life for women. That honesty was ahead of its time, direct, funny, and sharper than most comedies dared to be. But Dolly didn't just act. She wrote the title song, 9 to 5, and, as she loved to tell it, built the rhythm by tapping her acrylic nails on the dressing room table. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences nominated her for Best Original Song, a first for a country artist writing for her own film debut. That's not a cameo, that's a statement. Hollywood kept calling. In 1982, she starred in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, proving she could carry a musical film. By 1989's Steel Magnolias, playing Truvy, she showed a gentler, comic side that had nothing to do with singing. According to Variety, these roles didn't pull her away from country roots. They let her storytelling reach millions who'd never set foot in Nashville. For Dolly, Hollywood was just another way to take her world with her. What does it mean when a superstar brings her biggest investment right back home? According to the official Dollywood website, Dolly Parton opened Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee in 1986, not in Nashville or Los Angeles, but right in the Smoky Mountains where she grew up. She didn't just lend her name to a theme park the way most celebrities do. She built a business that she actually owns and runs, hiring local people, showcasing Appalachian crafts, and turning Sevier County into a destination. The Tennessee State Economic Report says Dollywood now provides more than 5,000 full-time and seasonal jobs, making it the largest employer in the area outside of public schools. That's not just an attraction. That's an economic engine. But Dollywood is only one part of the empire. Dolly controls her own production companies, television specials, movies, and even her own record label. She's not a figurehead. She's the owner. The BBC calls her name an international brand, but it's a brand that's still rooted in Tennessee, not some faceless corporation. For every critic who said you have to leave home behind to make it big, Dolly answered by building an economy in the place she came from. According to state records, the park and its related ventures pour hundreds of millions of dollars into the region every year. That's how you turn fame into something that lasts, by making sure your success lifts up the whole community. What kind of person turns personal pain into hope for millions of strangers? Dolly Parton did, and she did it in her father's name. According to the official Imagination Library, she started the program in 1995 because Robert Lee Parton, her daddy, the sharecropper who couldn't read or write, always felt left out when the world was written down instead of spoken. Dolly never forgot that. So she built a legacy for him that no one could erase. The Imagination Library began as a promise to Sevier County, Tennessee. Every child, no matter how poor, would get a free book in the mail every month from birth to age 5. Not a hand-me-down, not a library discard, but a brand new book, chosen for their age and mailed with their name on it. According to the Imagination Library's own records, this idea grew far beyond the Smokies. By 2026, they had shipped over 200 million books across the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Ireland. That's not just charity, it's changing the odds for kids who might have been left behind, just like Robert Lee was. Sometimes, the greatest gift is a story of your own. But Dolly's generosity didn't stop with books. In April 2020, Vanderbilt University Medical Center announced a $1 million donation from Dolly Parton, earmarked for infectious disease research. According to both Vanderbilt and Moderna, that money helped fund early work on the COVID-19 vaccine. When the world needed hope, Dolly's gift helped deliver it. She never forgot home either. After the 2016 Gatlinburg wildfires, Dolly's foundation stepped in, providing cash, supplies, and even direct payments to families who'd lost everything. Her philanthropy also reached local hospitals, scholarships, and wildlife conservation, each effort built to last. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences recognized this lifelong work with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 2025, according to the official Academy records. Dolly didn't just give, she built systems, changed lives, and made sure her father's name would be remembered with pride. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is put a book in a child's hands and say, "This is yours." Why would anyone choose to stand out so boldly, knowing the world is ready to judge? Dolly Parton never hid behind her look. She built it, piece by piece, like a suit of armor stitched with rhinestones and humor. The wigs got bigger, the heels got higher, and the nails sparkled like tiny disco balls. According to the BBC, she once said, "You wouldn't believe how much it costs to look this cheap." That line is pure Dolly, sharp, playful, and honest all at once. But there's more to it than a punchline. She told Rolling Stone she'd had breast augmentation and a nose job, not out of shame, but because she wanted to feel good in her own skin. She made her appearance a language, not a mask, one that said, "I know what you see, but you don't get to decide what it means." With every joke about her hair or her curves, she was the first to laugh, never letting anyone else write the story for her. That candor, that control, is why her glamour never felt like a wall. It was an invitation. Come closer. See the real person shining through. What does it mean when a legend belongs to everyone, not just the world she came from? For some, Dolly Parton was always a country queen. But for millions of younger fans, she first showed up as Aunt Dolly on Hannah Montana, that's right, the godmother of Miley Cyrus, in real life and on screen. According to People and Rolling Stone, those guest spots in 2006, 2007, and 2010 introduced Dolly to a new generation who had never heard her on the Grand Ole Opry or seen her in rhinestones. Instead, she was the wise, funny, loving godmother, just as she'd been for Miley and her dad, Billy Ray Cyrus, for decades. But her reach didn't stop there. Jolene, a song written in 1973, kept finding new voices, covered by everyone from Miley herself to Beyoncé, and even indie bands who turned it inside out. The BBC calls it one of the most reinterpreted songs in pop history. That's how a story about heartbreak and dignity keeps living, long after the first performance. Then there's the question of loyalty. Dolly became an icon for LGBTQ+ fans, earning GLAAD honors for her message of acceptance, but she never lost her conservative Southern base. According to the BBC, she walked a careful line, refusing to take sides in partisan politics. Some critics called that neutrality a cop-out, but Dolly always said she wanted her music and her heart to be a place where everyone felt welcome. Maybe that's why, when the world lost her, it felt like everyone lost a piece of home. In March 2025, after nearly 59 years together, Dolly Parton lost her husband, Carl Dean. He stayed out of the spotlight, letting her shine, and family described him as her anchor. In the aftermath, Dolly wrote an album for Carl. At the time of her death, the album had not been released, and its songs remained a private farewell. That spring, she canceled her Las Vegas residency, citing the need for healing. People magazine reported her words. She couldn't imagine performing in heels until she felt stronger. Her sister Ruth publicly asked for prayers, sharing that Dolly was facing both grief and health challenges. Dolly responded with her trademark reassurance, telling fans she was fine and grateful for their support, promising she'd return when ready. On August 25, 2026, Dolly's family announced she died at home in Nashville after a brief battle with cancer. The news was confirmed by CNN, the BBC, and the Recording Academy. The response was immediate and global. Buildings from the Empire State to the Sydney Opera House glowed pink. Artists across genres, from Taylor Swift to Paul McCartney, shared tributes. The Recording Academy counted 11 Grammy Awards and 3 Emmys. Billboard and RIAA confirmed over 100 million records sold and 25 #1 country singles. These numbers mark her place in music history, but they don't capture why her loss felt so personal to so many. Dolly's ambition never came at the expense of loyalty. She wore rhinestones and big hair, but never lost her humility or generosity. She didn't abandon her roots. She refused to let them define her limits. Even in a divided country, people found something familiar in her voice, humor, and kindness. That is her legacy. If Dolly's story moved you, like this video and subscribe for more documentaries. What does it mean for one voice to bridge so many divides? Right now, in a world still arguing over who belongs, Dolly Parton's legacy says you don't have to abandon your roots to lift others up. According to the BBC, her music and kindness reached across boundaries most of us never cross. We need that reminder more than ever.